Yes, occasionally I get people that come through to see me who may be particularly intuitive or psychic, and they've perhaps had small, almost like dreams or recurring dreams or aspects that seem to resonate for them that reminds them that it could quite well be a past life. Often they don't really get a lot of material. Often it comes through more of a knowing, perhaps a place that they go to, and it just somehow seems familiar, even though they've never been there before. I mean, just to give you an example, it was in fact the very first time I gave someone a past life regression, and they said there was something special about Venice, that they'd always had this fascination with Venice. And when we went into a past life, it turned out that she was actually in Venice, working in the dock area, and her job, as it turned out, was a keeper of prostitutes. And no one talked to her because this was considered to be one of the lowest of the low in terms of jobs. And it's quite strange because when she came out of the regression, she said, that can't possibly be a past life. I couldn't possibly have been doing something like that in a past life. And, you know, this actually illustrates one of the aspects of past lives, is that these stories emerge and they're often a complete surprise to the person who's doing it. And the way that I work is to use hypnosis, because in a hypnosis people go into an altered state of relaxation. It's a lot easier for that critical part of our mind just to drift to one side and for these stories to emerge. Now, the way that I work is I use past lives in a therapeutic way. My interest is, how does it help people solve the problems of today in the here and now? So the actual truth of past lives is really of less importance. Just to give you an illustration of how powerful past lives can be in the healing process, is that there was a client that I had who had an extreme pain all the way down her hands, all the way through to her shoulder. And the doctors couldn't find any medical explanation for it, and they ranked it as one level higher than terminal cancer. And because she was unable to take morphine, which would be the painkiller to take with this, because of a reaction to it, she was left in this incredible pain 24 hours a day. She wasn't able to hold glasses, wasn't able to do small household chores. Going to sleep was incredibly difficult because of the pain. And when we went back into a past life related to this, it turned out she was a young girl looking after orphans, and there'd been a fire, and the orphans that she was responsible for had died in the fire. She burned herself on her arms trying to rescue one of them, and was so overcome by the guilt of not looking after them that she committed suicide. And this aspect transferred over from the past life into her current life, and when she had had some problems with her children from her current life being potentially being taken by the father of the children, this triggered this old memory, and the pain came through. And once we'd cleared the past life and cleared the issues associated with it, the pain went. And there was the most amazing change, that she was able to get on with her life in a meaningful way. Didn't need to, she wasn't bound in a wheelchair as she was before. But she was able to get on with her life in a helpful way. So this just illustrates just how powerful past lives can be therapeutically. Well, I think in order to really fully appreciate that question, it'd be useful just to refer to research that I've done in what's called the life between lives. Now, what happens is that under deep levels of hypnosis, people are able to go beyond recalling past lives, and stories emerge which appear to be the soul memories that occur between lives. This was documented in a book that I've written called Exploring the Eternal Soul, and there are other authors that have written about this. This is an area where over 10,000 people have had these type of regressions, and the stories are very, very similar. So from a scientific perspective, this has got a lot of research validity with it. And there are two major parts of these soul memories. And the first part is about the reviewing of the past life, and the second part is about the planning for the next life. And obviously the planning for the next life can't take place until how well or not the previous life was really fully understood. And what happens is the souls, if something isn't complete in one lifetime, then the next lifetimes are planned so that there's an opportunity to master that particular area. So just to go back onto the example I was talking to you about before, about the girl who had died with all of this guilt about losing her children, she will have planned for this life to have been in a situation where guilt was created, to be in a situation she had children she was responsible for and they were seemingly being taken away from her. And then this was her opportunity to work through those issues. And in this case, the therapeutic use of past life regression helped her in the process of doing this. But this is like her soul experience to master and to move through this particular area. Because it's unresolved emotions that aren't cleared in one lifetime that get transferred into the next lifetime. Just to give you another example, there was a girl or a client that I had who had these thoughts of they're taking my children away, and got extremely angry to the point where she was unable to work for 1 or 2 days a month. She was a professional accountant, and this caused her quite a big problem. So she wanted to really understand why she should have this thought, they're taking my children. And she said, well, I don't have any children in this lifetime, so there's absolutely no reason why this thought should come through. So I allowed her to go into a past life related to this, and it turned out that she was in medieval England and was accused of being a witch, quite wrongly. And she was responsible for 2 children. And as she was drowned, because in those days, the way that they used to find out if people were witches were to tie them to a plank, submerge them underwater, and if they came up alive, they were a witch because the water rejected them. And if they came out drowned, they'd made a terrible mistake, but then it was too late. So if the water rejected them, they were taken away and burnt. So in either event, she knew she was going to die, but it wasn't actually the death that concerned her. It was who was going to look after her children. And of course, once she was able to understand this and the issues associated were worked as part of the therapeutic part that goes with past life regression, then the thoughts just didn't bother her anymore. In fact, she said she only ever had the thought that came up once, and as soon as the thought came up, she said, I know where that's coming from. I can just let go of it. And the other thing that she said is, I never told you before we started the session, but I've been terrified by water. My mother once tried to wash my hair, and I screamed so loud that she never did it again. She said, now I know where it came from. It came from that past life of being submerged in the water. And this is one of the amazing things with these past life stories that come up. They've got this amazing way of threading into aspects of the current life that aren't working out right, whether clients tell you about it or not, it's almost like this deepest truth eventually emerges, and clients then are able to work through the issues and have the most amazing transformations as a result of them. So just to conclude, this research with life between life regression has found that there's a part of us that people refer to as the soul that moves from lifetime to lifetime, and it's something that we all have. This is the divine part of us. And it's this divine part that chooses to take down particular lessons. And in the examples I've been talking to you about, I've taken down emotional aspects in each lifetime till eventually that aspect is mastered. Almost as if the earth was a schoolroom and there's an opportunity to eventually work through situations to master emotional situations and then move on in a progression of soul development. That we are here as souls to experience and to grow. There's no right, there's no wrong. There's just understanding and appreciating there's a divine part of us that we all have and we can all connect to. Some people do remember the previous lives, particularly children, and there's been some amazing research done by Professor Ian Stevenson with children as young as 3 or 4, just as they're beginning to talk, who do remember previous lifetimes. But as we start getting older, then these memories start becoming obscured, starting to not be something that we would consciously tune into unless we use relaxation or hypnosis in order to remember them. And I think there's a very good reason about why we should come here without all of this knowledge on past lives. I mean, for example, if in a past life we've been a perpetrator of some sort, it really wouldn't be very helpful as a child to remember all the details of the thing that we did. It's much easier as children for us to come through with this blank sheet, unless there are some past lives where it's helpful to have some level of memory associated with it. And I think the other reason is because as souls, it's much easier to come down here and have an opportunity to master these old lessons without feeling necessarily that there's other past lives that there's some guilt or indebtedness to. Now, of course, when people go into past life regressions, that's completely different. It's because they're only tuning into one of the hundreds of past lives that they will have had, particularly for the purpose of some helpful way. And as adults, it's much easier for us to be able to understand and to know that past lives are something that happened in the past, that the here and now is the only thing that's of importance, but we can learn from past lives and we can change the way we are. So these are very good reasons of why past lives aren't readily available. If you are interested in the mechanisms of it, then really reading about the life between life is an important area. And certainly the book, Healing the Eternal Soul, has a chapter on that, which explains it in much more detail.